They thought he was just an ordinary old man. When they took away his first-class seat, he quietly retreated. But his grandson made one phone call, and within 15 minutes, 10 soldiers and a general stormed the airport. "Sir, please come with me." A quiet humiliation hung in the air. The flight attendant's voice was cold, mechanical. Passengers immediately turned to look at the elderly man in a military cap gripping his boarding pass tightly. Colonel Thomas simply nodded. He folded the ticket and slowly made his way to the back of the plane. What no one on board could have imagined was that just minutes later, 10 soldiers and an outraged general would arrive at the airport to stop the plane from taking off. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss videos like this. Let's dive into this story. Colonel James Thomas, 89 years old, was born on a small farm in Kansas. He grew up surrounded by cornfields and the scent of damp earth after the rain. At 18, he enlisted in the Army, not for glory or adventure, but because he believed that serving his country was a sacred duty. The Korean War found him young and determined. Vietnam made him seasoned and wise. Between both conflicts, Thomas learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act in spite of it. He was awarded the Silver Star, one of the highest military honors in the United States, for bravery in combat. Thomas is a simple man. No luxury, no fuss. He wears plain khaki pants, a light blue shirt, and the same veteran's military cap he's worn for years. In his hands, he holds an envelope with an official invitation from the United States Congress, a special ceremony at the Capitol to honor veterans from different generations. Thomas is scheduled to give a speech on leadership in times of crisis. The first-class ticket was a gift from Congress itself, a small gesture of recognition for his 32 years of military service and a life devoted to the nation. But Rebecca Wilson doesn't know that. To the flight attendant, Thomas is just another unremarkable passenger holding a boarding pass. The plane is nearly full. Thomas walks slowly down the aisle, checking seat numbers. 5A, first-class window seat, exactly as printed on his ticket. He places his small carry-on bag in the overhead compartment and is just about to sit down when a voice stops him. "Excuse me, sir." Rebecca appears at his side, accompanied by another airline employee, a younger man with an uncomfortable expression. "I'm Rebecca Wilson, the lead flight attendant. This is Greg Parker, also with the airline." Thomas turns to them politely. "Due to priority seating adjustments, your ticket has been reassigned. I'm going to need you to move to seat 47B in economy." "What exactly happened?" "Internal operational policy issues, sir." Thomas looks down at the ticket in his hands. Then he looks at Rebecca. His eyebrows lift slightly, but his voice stays calm. "The ticket says seat 5A. That's what it was issued for." "I understand, sir, but we have priority passengers who need these seats." "Priority passengers?" Rebecca hesitates. Greg shifts awkwardly beside her. "Passengers with a frequent flyer history in first class. It's part of our loyalty policy." Thomas processes the information slowly. His eyes scan the first-class cabin, taking in the seats now filled with executives typing on laptops. "You understand, sir?" "Yes, I understand that an honest citizen who pays his taxes and served his country is worth less than someone who regularly buys expensive tickets." Rebecca swallows hard. Greg lowers his eyes. "That's not what this is, sir. It's just a policy matter." Thomas picks up his carry-on. He takes one last look at seat 5A and walks toward the back of the plane. At 89, he's faced enemy bullets, lost brothers in arms, and witnessed horrors most people could never imagine. But never had he felt so disrespected as he did in that moment. Seat 47B is wedged between two cramped chairs. Thomas squeezes in as best he can, settling between a teenager wearing headphones and a woman whose coats spill into his space. His back, marked by decades of military service and old surgeries, protests against the narrow seat. There's no room for his legs. He shifts several times, but there's no position that offers real comfort. The teenager turns up the volume. The sound leaks through the headphones, something about rebellion and anger. Thomas closes his eyes and takes a slow, steady breath. Rebecca walks down the aisle, checking that passengers have fastened their seat belts. When she reaches row 47B, she avoids looking directly at Thomas. "Everything okay here?" Thomas looks up. "All good, ma'am." "Great." She moves on quickly. Thomas reaches into his shirt pocket and pulls out a small medal, the Silver Star. He doesn't wear it on his chest out of pride, but he always keeps it close. It's a reminder that once his country saw his worth. But today, Thomas felt like a stranger in the very nation he had served. 3 rows ahead, still in economy class, Lieutenant Mark Thomas finishes stowing his backpack in the overhead compartment. At 27, he carries the same determined look that once shone in his grandfather's eyes. Mark served 2 years in the National Guard. He learned from Thomas what military service truly means. When he sees his grandfather walking down the aisle toward the back of the plane, Mark frowns. Thomas was supposed to be in first class. That's what the ticket said, the same one he'd proudly shown Mark the night before, excited about finally having a more comfortable seat to ease his back pain. Mark stands and quietly follows him. He finds Thomas settling into the tight seat, clearly uncomfortable. "Grandpa, what happened?" Thomas looks up. He smiles warmly, but there's sadness behind it. "Change of plans, kid." "What kind of change of plans?" "They reassigned my seat, said it was necessary due to operational issues." Mark glances around. He notices the uncomfortable expressions on the faces of nearby passengers, people who clearly witnessed the seat switch. He spots Rebecca a few rows ahead, looking down at a clipboard, deliberately avoiding eye contact. This is unacceptable. "Mark, no. Grandpa, this is unacceptable." The young lieutenant pulls out his phone. His hands tremble slightly, fueled by restrained indignation. "Who are you calling?" "Someone who can fix this." Mark scrolls through his contacts until he finds the name he's looking for. Colonel William Harrison, Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force. The phone rings once, twice. Colonel Harrison's office. "This is Lieutenant Mark Thomas, Colorado National Guard. I need to speak with the colonel. It's urgent." "The colonel's in a meeting, Lieutenant." "May I take a message?" Mark looks over at his grandfather, who's now watching with growing curiosity. "Tell him it's about Colonel James Thomas. Tell him he'll want to take this call." "One moment, Lieutenant." Less than 30 seconds later, a deep voice comes on the line. "This is Colonel Harrison. Did you say Colonel James Thomas?" "Yes, sir." "My grandfather." Colonel William Harrison's voice trembled with emotion on the other end of the line. At 73, he had never forgotten the day a young colonel named James Thomas coordinated the rescue that pulled him from a deadly trap in the Mekong Delta. "Your grandfather's a hero, Lieutenant. What can I do for him?" Mark quickly explained the situation, the public humiliation, the disrespect, the forced seat reassignment. On the other end, silence hung heavy as lead. "What airport are you at?" "Denver, Metropolitan Airlines Flight 447 to Washington." "Don't go anywhere." The call ended. Harrison didn't waste a second. He picked up his desk phone and dialed the direct number of Richard Simmons's private office, CEO and founder of Metropolitan Airlines. Simmons was known for 2 things: his billion-dollar fortune and his unwavering patriotism, a Gulf War veteran. He had turned a small regional airline into one of the largest aviation companies in the country. Richard Simmons speaking. "Richard, this is William Harrison, Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force." "Colonel Harrison, what a surprise. How can I help you?" "We have a situation on one of your flights. A decorated veteran is being disrespected by your staff right now." "Disrespected? What do you mean?" Harrison explained everything. Each word hit Simmons like a punch to the gut. My God, this is happening right now. "Exactly. Flight 447 out of Denver." Simmons didn't hesitate. "James, we'll fix this immediately." As soon as he hung up, Harrison made a second call. "General Ford, I need a favor, an urgent one." Denver Air Force Base Commander General Michael Ford picked up on the first ring. "What do you need, William?" "I've got one of ours, a veteran Silver Star recipient, being humiliated at the airport. I need your help to make it right." "How many men do you need?" "You decide. But I want everyone in that airport to understand that when you disrespect our veterans, the armed forces respond." "It'll be my honor." I'm going personally." 15 minutes later at Denver International Airport, the sound was unmistakable. Military boots marching in perfect sync across the marble floor of the terminal. Passengers paused and turned to watch. General Michael Ford, 62, led the way himself, flanked by 10 uniformed Air Force soldiers. Their uniforms were crisp, their insignias gleaming, their posture flawless. They moved through the terminal like a wave of purpose. Airport staff stepped aside with reverence. Children pointed in awe. Adults whispered, trying to make sense of the scene. At gate B-17, Rebecca Wilson was checking the passenger list when she heard the sound of boots approaching. She looked up and went pale. "Who's in charge of the crew on this flight?" General Ford's voice echoed through the terminal. Rebecca stepped forward. "I'm the lead flight attendant." "Where is Colonel James Thomas?" "He's already on board." "What seat?" Rebecca swallowed hard. She knew how bad the answer would sound. 47B economy. General Ford closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the intensity in his stare made Rebecca instinctively step back. Where was he supposed to be? 5A first class. If the ticket was issued for first class, why is he not sitting there? Rebecca tried to explain something about loyalty policies and internal procedures, but the words came out jumbled and meaningless. The general cut her off with a simple gesture. "I didn't ask about your policies. I asked why a decorated veteran with a silver star isn't being treated with the respect he deserves." He turned to the soldiers. "Let's make this right." Inside the plane, passengers glanced out the windows, curious as the military team approached the aircraft. Some began filming, sensing something remarkable was about to happen. Thomas, still squeezed into seat 47B, couldn't see the movement outside. Mark, seated a few rows ahead, turned around to look at his grandfather and smiled discreetly. General Ford stepped in first, followed by two soldiers. His presence filled the narrow aisle. Conversation stopped instantly. Silence fell over the cabin. "Where is Colonel James Thomas?" His voice carried through the plane. Passengers turned, scanning the cabin for the man he had addressed. Thomas, still unsure of what was happening, slowly raised his hand. General Ford walked the aisle and stopped directly in front of seat 47B. When he saw Thomas wedged between two passengers, his expression hardened. "Colonel Thomas?" "Yes, sir." The two soldiers snapped to attention and saluted. For a few seconds, the only sound was the hum of the airplane engines. "Colonel, I'm General Michael Ford of the United States Air Force. On behalf of the armed forces, I apologize for the way you were treated today." Thomas blinked, still trying to grasp the situation. That's not necessary, General." "It absolutely is, Colonel. Colonel Thomas, please come with me." Thomas slowly stood. His back protested after the long minutes in that cramped seat. The general offered his arm for support. They walked together down the aisle. Every eye followed them. Ford turned to the first-class passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this man is a decorated veteran who served our country. He received the Silver Star for saving American lives in enemy territory, and today he was disrespected on this flight." When they reached seat 5A, the general gestured respectfully. "Your seat, Colonel." Thomas sat down slowly. The seat was spacious and comfortable. His legs finally had room. His back found proper support. "Thank you, General." "No, Colonel. It's the country that thanks you." Despite outranking him, General Ford stood at attention and saluted. The soldiers did the same. Then they turned and left. Mission complete. From a distance, Rebecca Wilson watched, realizing her career had just taken a very different turn. The silence that follows the soldiers' departure is unlike anything the passengers have ever experienced. Thomas settles into seat 5A, where he should have been all along. His hands rest calmly on the official envelope from Congress. There's no triumph in his expression, no satisfaction over Rebecca's humiliation, only the quiet dignity of a man who has finally been recognized. A middle-aged man in a sharp business suit seated in the first row turned slightly. "Sir, I just wanted to say thank you for your service." Other passengers begin to speak up. A woman nods respectfully. A young couple whispers words of admiration. Even the teenager with the headphones takes them off and looks at Thomas with newfound respect. Mark walks up to his grandfather's seat. "How do you feel, Grandpa?" Thomas looks out the window. Outside, the military unit is still visible in the terminal, walking away with the same determination they arrived with. "You know, Mark, for a moment I thought my country had forgotten me, but now I realize my country never forgot." Rebecca approaches slowly, hesitantly. Her hands tremble slightly as she leans down to speak to Thomas. "Mr. Thomas, I wanted to apologize. I didn't know. I had no idea who you were." Thomas watches her for a long moment. His gaze is kind but steady. "Miss, the problem wasn't that you didn't know who I was. The problem was that you didn't treat an elderly man with basic dignity, regardless of who he might be." The words strike Rebecca like a bolt of lightning. "You're right. I'm sorry. I accept your apology, but I hope you learned something from this." "I will, sir. I promise." When the plane lands in Washington, the passengers break into spontaneous applause. This isn't the usual polite clapping after a bumpy landing. It's something else entirely. An applause of recognition, of respect, of rediscovered national pride. Thomas rises slowly, picks up his small carry-on, and heads toward the exit. But this time, he doesn't walk alone. Mark is at his side. Other passengers nod or greet him respectfully as he passes. At the plane's door, Rebecca waits one last time. "Colonel, thank you for teaching me something important today." "You're welcome, miss. Just treat people with dignity. All people." "I will," Thomas smiles, the first genuine smile of the day. Then it was worth it. Richard Simmons's desk, CEO of Metropolitan Airlines, was covered in reports, security footage, and the transcript of the call with Colonel Harrison. He ran his hands through his graying hair, still processing the magnitude of what had just happened. His assistant Margaret walked in, carrying more documents. "Richard, the story is already on social media. A passenger recorded the moment the military boarded the plane. The video has 500,000 views in just 2 hours." Simmons grabbed the tablet and watched the footage. He saw General Ford enter the aircraft. He saw Thomas being escorted to first class. He saw the applause. "Margaret, I want Rebecca Wilson in my office tomorrow at 8 a.m., and I want Greg Parker here too, and I want an emergency meeting with the entire customer service department today." "Yes, sir." Simmons stood and walked over to the window overlooking the airport tarmac. Below, Metropolitan Airlines planes were taking off and landing at regular intervals, each one carrying hundreds of passengers who trusted the company to treat them with respect. "Margaret?" "Yes, sir?" "Cancel all my appointments for the rest of the week. I'm going to personally write a new policy for this company, and I'll make sure that no veteran is ever disrespected on one of our flights again." Days later, Metropolitan Airlines announced the implementation of the Thomas Protocol, a new corporate policy designed to honor and respect all military veterans aboard their flights. They released the following statement: "Metropolitan Airlines acknowledges that our freedom to fly American skies was earned through the blood and sacrifice of our veterans. It is our duty and our privilege to honor them on every flight." Rebecca Wilson was reassigned for 6 months to the training department, where she now teaches new employees about the importance of respect and dignity in customer service. Her first class always begins with the story of Colonel Thomas. Greg Parker was promoted to supervisor after submitting a detailed report on the incident. The Thomas Protocol soon became a model for other U.S. airlines. Within 6 months, more than 15 companies in the industry adopted similar policies. In Washington, the ceremonial hall is adorned with American flags and portraits of military heroes from different eras. Veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf, and Iraq sit in places of honor in the front row. Thomas walks to the front. He has something important to say. "Members of Congress, fellow veterans, my fellow Americans." Thomas reaches into his pocket and pulls out the small silver star medal. He holds it between his fingers, letting the light catch the polished metal. "This medal doesn't make me better than anyone else, but it stands for something we should all remember. Sometimes we fight not for personal glory, but to protect the values that define us as a nation. In Vietnam, I learned that real courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when it's hard. I'm not here to ask that veterans be treated as special. I'm here to remind you that respect, dignity, and gratitude aren't privileges we grant to a few. They are the values that define us as Americans. When you return home today, don't remember Colonel Thomas. Remember every man and woman who had the daily choice between indifference and compassion to live for others. That's what's worth protecting. That's what's worth serving for. The applause starts slowly, but within seconds, the entire hall is on its feet, applauding not just Thomas but the values he stood for. And on that day, perhaps the most important change wasn't a seat on a plane, but a shift in millions of small, everyday moments. Employees showing more patience to the elderly, people offering seats on public transportation, grandchildren respecting their grandparents, individuals choosing compassion over indifference. Because we don't treat people well because they're important. They become important because we treat them well.